righteous social order against evil, and writing on Napoleon has been bedevilled ever since by a moral dimension, which has entailed an imperative to slander or glorify. Beginning with Stendhal, who claimed he could only write of Napoleon in religious terms, and no doubt inspired by Goethe, who saw his life as that of a demigod, French and other European historians have struggled to keep the numinous out of their work, and even today it is tinged by a sense of awe. Until very recently, Anglo-Saxon historians have shown reluctance to allow an understanding of the spirit of the times to help them see Napoleon as anything other than an alien monster. Rival national mythologies have added layers of prejudice which many find hard to overcome. Napoleon was, in every sense, the product of his times. He was, in many ways, the embodiment of his epoch. If one wishes to gain an understanding of him and what he was about, one has to place him in context. This requires ruthless jettisoning of received opinion and nationalist prejudice, and dispassionate examination of what the seismic conditions of his times threatened and offered. In the 1790s, Napoleon entered a world at war, and one in which the very basis of human society was being questioned. It was a struggle for supremacy and survival in which every state on the continent acted out of self-interest, breaking treaties and betraying allies shamelessly. Monarchs, statesmen, and commanders on all sides displayed similar levels of fearful aggression, greed, callousness, and brutality. To ascribe to any of the states involved a morally superior role is ahistorical humbug, and to condemn the lust for power is to deny human nature and political necessity. For Aristotle, power was, along with wealth and friendship, one of the essential components of individual happiness. For Hobbes, the urge to acquire it was not only innate, but beneficent, as it led men to dominate and therefore organize communities, and no social organization of any form could exist without the power of one or more individuals to order others. Napoleon did not start the war that broke out in 1792, when he was a mere lieutenant, and continued, with one brief interruption, until 1814. Which side was responsible for the outbreak and for the continuing hostilities is fruitlessly debatable, since responsibility cannot be laid squarely on one side or the other. The fighting cost lives, for which responsibility is often heaped on Napoleon, which is absurd, as all the belligerents must share the blame, and he was not as profligate with the lives of his own soldiers as some. French losses in the 7 years of revolutionary government, 1792 to 99, are estimated at 400,000 to 500,000, those during the 15 years of Napoleon's rule at just under twice as high, at 800,000 to 900,000. Given that these figures include not only dead, wounded, and sick, but also those reported as missing, whose numbers went up dramatically as his ventures took the armies further afield, it is clear that battle losses were lower under Napoleon than during the revolutionary period, despite the increasing use of heavy artillery and the greater size of the armies. The majority of those classed as missing were deserters, who either drifted back home or settled in other countries. This is not to diminish the suffering or the trauma of the war, but to put it in perspective. My aim in this book is not to justify or condemn, but to piece together the life of the man born Napoleone Buonaparte, and to examine how he became Napoleon and achieved what he did, and how it came about that he undid it. In order to do so, I have concentrated on verifiable primary sources, treating with caution the memoirs of those such as Bourrienne, Fouché, Barras, and others who wrote principally to justify themselves or to tailor their own image, and have avoided using as evidence those of the Duchesse d'Abrantes, which were written years after the events by her lover, the novelist Balzac. I also ignore the various anecdotes regarding Napoleon's birth and childhood, believing that it is immaterial, as well as unprovable, that he cried or not when he was born, that he liked playing with swords and drums as a child, had a childhood crush on some little girl, or that a comet was sighted at his birth and death.